Watching him go from, running around and just being a normal, silly 12-year-old to being completely paralysed in a bed within 4 days was just, I think back now and it was like a dream. Maysen turned to talk to me and I noticed that his words were slurred and one side of his face was paralysed.
Maysen was diagnosed with a syndrome called Guillain Barré Syndrome. It's an autoimmune condition that affects how the nerves are functioning in the body.
He felt every ounce of nerve pain through his entire body, but he was completely paralysed.
From a physio perspective, that affects the movement in his arms and his legs and his trunk. So kids with Guillain Barré Syndrome have to learn to sit again, use their arms, use their legs, stand and walk again.
I was just stuck in bed, couldn't move.
Initially, they started Mace on something called IVIG, which is like an immunotherapy. That started to work and then started to fail. And then we tried it again and it actually made him really unwell. The change in 24 hours from, not being able to breathe on his own to having the BiPAP off and talking to me and actually lifting his hands off his chest for the first time in 3 weeks. I remember walking in and just crying because I hadn't seen that for so long.
By the time Maysen had made it over to rehab, he had had weakness from being in a hospital bed in the ICU without having any opportunities to move. Early stages of rehab, it's really important to be able to get out of bed, and this was something that was really challenging for him.
Certainly the team approach and the goal-based approach to therapy was really instrumental in motivating Maysen.
We found out there was a pool here and that could be part of his recovery, and that was his ultimate goal.
Really early priority for us was to help him to learn to sit up, find the right wheelchair or the right seating,
and increase his time out of bed every day before we could get him to leave the room.
And then we were able to progress to standing and stepping over into a more normal wheelchair.
It took almost 3.5 months before we actually got to the pool, but when he finally got there, that was definitely a huge, huge plus in his recovery.
At this stage, Maysen couldn't stand. He couldn't walk, but when he got in the pool, he could stand, he could walk, he could dive under to collect toys.
From 1 week, he couldn't paddle himself, and then the next week, he was kicking his legs, and then the next week, he was pulling himself along in the water and throwing things.
At the same time, his personality really started to come through on the ward. He found a new community for himself on Kelpie. He befriended the nurses, he was making his neighbours, other kids nearby, laugh and smile.
Once he forms a friendship, he holds on to that friendship dearly. I mean, he made a friend in here, her name was Olivia. Olivia was non-verbal, but I've never seen a non-verbal child smile and be so incredibly happy just to see somebody's face. Her family really made our journey a lot easier. It was just a really great friendship. Very thankful to have met them.
I think the difference with Maysen is that he was able to be that person for the kids even when the days were hard. Maysen really turned a corner and his progress became daily.
Every step I took, I was thinking in my head like one step then the other. I just kept doing that and then it got me better and better and I kept walking and now I walk everywhere.
The time that we were here, I'm glad we felt so comfortable and like we were a family with everyone, including other patients. It was really good to watch his recovery and be supportive of others as well. He's almost back to doing everything he was doing before, which we would have never expected that at all. Yeah.